Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Primary Maths Podcast, the show where we talk all things primary maths. I'm Jon Cripwell, and this is the first of a special series of summer episodes of the Primary Maths Podcast. And today is even more different because I am flying solo. Becky's off on a well-earned break. There's no guest joining me today. And frankly, I'm sure as it is the first week of the summer holidays, most teachers are either relaxing in a hammock somewhere on a beach, or probably more likely in IKEA regretting their life choices right about now. So this week we're going to keep it short and sweet. I've got a special edition of the Maths of Life, and we're also going to dig into a question from one of you, the listeners, because I put out on social media. If you're not following me or the show on social media, we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, and I asked for your questions, and I've got one of those that we're going to delve into a little bit today. So that's coming up a little bit later. But first, we're going to tackle the maths of life. So this week on the Maths of Life, we're keeping it short and sweet. We're going to dig into something that we all think we know, the school summer holidays. Where do they come from? Why are they 6 weeks long? Could they be 10 weeks long? Is it really just so that teachers can recover fully from sports day? We were going to, I'm going to dive into a little bit of the history around the Great British Summer Holiday and find a little bit of maths along the way as well. So first of all, it's all about harvest, right? This is, according to my research, a bit of a popular myth. Actually, people often say school holidays exist so that kids could help out with the harvest, which makes sense, right? You know, child labour, dangerous machinery, vegetables, so far, so classic Victorian Britain. But no, by the time our current school system was taking shape, the sort of mid-1800s, the mid-19th century, most farms were already becoming mechanised. Kids with scythes weren't really the vibe anymore. And when you think about it, anyway, harvest time, it's not really August and July, is it? It's autumn. So finishing the summer break in early September wouldn't actually help anyone get the potatoes in. The truth is a bit more interesting and a lot more about status, steam trains and sunburn. Way back in medieval times, holidays, or holy days, were a big part of life. The name literally comes from saints' days in the Christian calendar, which meant time off work, parties, feasts, and occasionally spiritual enlightenment. Like Glastonbury, but with more incense. Now, it wasn't quite the good life, no weekends for one, but if you added up all of the feast days, pilgrimages, and saintly excuses to stop working, you might get surprisingly close to the 28 days of annual leave most people get today. The modern Church of England calendar includes at least 38 officially recognised feast or holy days. Sure, you might have to do a little bit of threshing between Walsingham and Whitsun, but there was definitely downtime in medieval workplaces. And people did travel on those festivals. Pilgrimages were the OG staycations. You might wander off to Walsingham to pray for fertility, or head to Canterbury to show off your new walking stick and meet a few like-minded travellers. It wasn't that different from a modern group tour, I guess, except that you were probably more likely to catch the plague. Fast forward to the 18th century and the birth of the Grand Tour. Not the Amazon Prime show. Think gap year, but with fewer backpacks and more powdered wigs. This was often when wealthy young men, and occasionally women, would travel across Europe with a French-speaking guide to soak up culture, admire architecture, practice their fencing, and basically learn how to be insufferable at dinner parties. They'd head to places like Paris, Florence, Rome, and Venice, ticking off the Colosseum, collecting statues, and definitely not getting up to any mischief at all. Absolutely none. From a mathematical point of view, the Grand Tour is a potential case study in speed and distance over time. In the 1700s, for instance, a trip from London to Rome might take 3 months each way. By 1850, you could do it in under a week by train and steamer. Today, you can fly there in under 3 hours. And tour was part education, part holiday, very much part social flex, really. And in a way, it gave us the modern blueprint for travel, seeing the sights, taking bad photos, buying overpriced souvenirs. I'm sure lots of them came home with a novelty fridge magnet. Thank you very much, Enlightenment. Into the 19th century, this is where summer holidays as we know them really began. With steam power came trains, and with trains came day trips. Suddenly, the British seaside, once the realm of smugglers and suspiciously damp fishermen, became accessible to the masses, even people living like I do in the middle of the country with not a beach in sight and barely any seagulls unless you're near the tip. The working classes, especially in cities, were now tied to factory hours, not the rhythms of the farm. That meant scheduled time off. And with the Bank Holidays Act of 1871, it became official. So what did people do with those precious days off? They packed a suitcase, jumped on a train, and headed to Blackpool, Scarborough, or Southend to paddle in freezing water, burn themselves on questionable sausage rolls. A tradition that remains strong to this day, I'm sure you'll agree. To put it in maths terms, it was all about affordability and access. A third-class train ticket to Southend in the 1880s might have cost a shilling, about £5 or £6 today, making the beach an achievable luxury. By contrast, a family return to Skegness in 2024 from where I live can cost over £100. Meanwhile, school timetables began to align with the August summer factory break, partly because classrooms were unbearable in the heat at that time of year, and partly because wealthier families were all off on having jelly and blancmange in Devon anyway. And this, roughly, is how we ended up with the 6-week summer break. Part logistics, part social norm, part classic Victorian compromise. Fast forward a little further, and by the mid-20th century, British holidaymakers were looking even further afield. Seaside towns even started losing their shine, especially when compared to, say, Spain, where the sea is actually warm. Thanks to package holidays and budget airlines, suddenly everyone could go abroad. And they did. You could book a week in Mallorca with flight, hotel, and potentially dodgy buffet included, and all for less than the cost of a train to Cornwall. If we looked at cost per day, the budget airlines simply changed the game. In the 1960s, international travel was still a luxury, but by the late 90s, flights for under £30 were fairly common. Although if you add baggage, obviously a seat and the right to breathe, it comes out to about £170, as I know to my cost, having recently booked a flight to the Netherlands with a budget airline. And here's the thing. This was basically the Grand Tour, condensed. See the sights, experience the culture, attempt the local language, drink far too much sangria, get up to mischief. Except now, you also came home with a sunburn. And now, these days, we're sort of in a weird phase. On the one hand, people travel more than ever to Bali, to Iceland, to Dubai. On the other hand, there's been a real surge in nostalgia holidays, apparently. Canal boats, steam railways, camping in the rain like it's 1972. Staycations have become a thing, partly because of cost, partly because of climate guilt, and partly because, well, have you seen the price of airport parking charges recently? There's even talk of space tourism now, isn't there? In 50 years' time, the Year 6 Leavers trip might involve low gravity and, I don't know, dehydrated pizza on the moon. Okay, so I asked for your questions and we got a few, but I'm always willing to have a few more. So if you'd like to get in touch, you can email us at primarymathspodcast@twinkle.co.uk or find me on LinkedIn, Primary Maths Pod on Instagram or TikTok, and ask a question there, and you might get featured next week. This week's question comes from Joe, who asks, how do you balance fluency with problem solving? our school constantly seems to go between focusing on fluency or focusing on problem solving. Should you save problem solving until you've nailed fluency? What comes first? So this is a great classic question, and it's one that comes up a lot when I'm working with schools or working with maths leads. To answer it properly, though, I think we need to start by being really clear about what we mean by fluency, reasoning, and problem solving. They're the three main aims of the national curriculum, but I feel like particularly the last two often get bundled together. We talk about reasoning and problem solving as if they are interchangeable, and fluency as if it's something completely discrete and separate. So let's start with fluency. According to the NCETM, fluency isn't just about knowing your times table at speed. It's about three main strands: accuracy, efficiency, and flexibility. It means being able to choose appropriate methods, use them reliably, adapt them when needed, recall key facts that are going to help you, and not necessarily always just the key fact that you need to solve the problem, but it could be an associated key fact that's going to help you make that jump from not knowing what to do to being able to solve the problem. Reasoning, meanwhile, is all about thinking logically, making connections between disparate areas of maths or spotting patterns, being able to justify or explain your reasoning. It's not the same thing as problem solving, and I think often these two things get conflated and treated as if they are the same thing. There's an important distinction. Um, and reasoning definitely deserves its own spotlight. We can think about it, and Nathan Burns recently in an episode talks about it in terms of metacognition, being able to analyze your own thinking, be aware of that. Often, I think reasoning opportunities arise through oracy opportunities and being able to talk and discuss your own thinking or a way through a problem. Whereas problem solving, as defined by the EEF and others, is all about knowing what to do in unfamiliar contexts, making sense of a situation, choosing a strategy, and often combining multiple steps or concepts to reach a solution. The key point is you don't immediately know how to solve it. It isn't something that you've just practiced 10 times. Um, that's what makes it a problem. It's not just a tricky question or a similar question, but with bigger numbers. So when someone says, let's focus on getting them fluent first and we'll do problem solving later, I totally get it. And some of the schemes out there save the problem solving until the last couple of questions, which I think is a mistake personally. Because I think we're setting up a false timeline here. Fluency and problem solving, to my mind, feed into each other. Yes, pupils need basic facts and methods in order to make problem solving easier, but they also need to learn how to solve problems, not just hope that it emerges by osmosis once they're fluent. So, what the research suggests is that we need to do both. Teach problem solving explicitly, and that's something that I'm working on alongside Becky actually quite a lot at the moment, thinking about how we can make that process explicit and help teachers with understanding how to help children solve problems. Breaking it down into strategy types, modeling how to approach it, and making the problem visible, all really important components of that. And we also need to teach fluency systematically as well, so that pupils have got the tools that they need to draw on when it comes to solving problems. Reasoning, for me, sits in the middle and it supports both. I think it's very difficult to become fluent without any reasoning going on, without understanding why 6 times 4 is one lot of 4 more than 5 times 4. You need reasoning to understand that, really. And problem solving is also very difficult if you don't have reasoning to sit alongside it and support it as well. So, for example, if a child can explain why a method works, they're more likely to spot when it doesn't work. If they can reason about a pattern, they're more likely to make connections across problems. So, how do we balance it? Well, I think we have to, as I mentioned, teach each of them discreetly, give each one time and focus, but we also need to look for opportunities to bring them together, enrich tasks, which Enrich is still a fantastic source for, by the way. Intelligent practice, variation, and carefully chosen activities where fluency isn't the goal, but it's still required. For example, you might practice number bonds through a pattern-seeking task or pattern-spotting task. Or you might explore multi-step problems where one step relies on known facts and then the next one requires a little bit of strategic thinking. As ever, it's all about choosing and designing the activity with what you want the children to notice in mind. We've been working on this in a fluency session. We want to continue practicing that fluency, but we also want to add in some reasoning and problem solving to go along with it. I guess what I'm trying to say in short is don't treat fluency and problem solving like they're in a queue. They're different skills, but they work best when they're developed side by side, with reasoning acting as sort of the bridge between them. And if all of that sounds a little bit idealistic, good. Maths should be ambitious. Just make sure the problems that you're setting aren't all disguised fluency exercises in fancy dress. I see that quite a lot. Give pupils real problems, real choices, and space to think. Start a lesson, not with fluency, but with a problem, and then think about what fluency skills we might need to be able to unpick that problem and practice those, and then return to the problem. Having a problem as a start of a lesson actually can often be a really nice hook or way into the lesson. It can give the learning a purpose. We can agree that we don't know how to solve this yet, but we can look for opportunities and discussions in order to find a way of solving a problem. And if you are using a scheme that does leave all those problem solving activities until the end, don't be afraid to move them around a little bit. Start the next lesson with the problem-solving activity from the previous lesson, because otherwise some children may never get the opportunity to actually do any problem solving. And that, to me, is the biggest problem of all. So that is just about it for this first in the summer special editions of the Primary Maths Podcast. Normal episodes will resume in September. We've already got some fantastic guests lined up for you, and I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear that Becky will be back next week as well to update us all on what she's spotted, I'm sure, on her travels. But in the meantime, if you are working in a school and you're on your holidays at the moment, I hope you're having the best time. I hope you're relaxing. I hope you're managing to unwind. If you are still working in whatever environment, ditto. I'm here alongside you, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the Primary Maths Podcast Summer Edition. I hope to see you then.